You know, it's interesting. When we plan these services, I always talk to the musician ahead of time. And Deb's an early bird, so she contacted me way before I was ready to really talk about what I was talking about. But we planned the music, and the music always inspires my talk. It always just seems to. And this song in particular, you know, the reading actually came to me last night, and the affirmation came from that. And you know, the talk is really I am. It just keeps repeating itself. And Deb knew this, 3 weeks ago? Like, I didn't know, but she knew. So it's interesting how Spirit brings everything together perfectly. What I really wanted to talk about was the experience I've had in the last few weeks. And I'm really glad that Kathy Milano is here today, and Reverend Julie and Connie's here, and those of you who were at the Seeding the Light gathering, because I was there for 5 or 6 days. I don't even remember. It's kind of a blur. It was such a, looking back, it feels like it was a whirlwind. And I remember my last day when I received you know, healing from Francisco, one of the shamans, and I walked out of there just, you know, my head felt like it was spinning, and I was very discombobulated in a worldly sense. And I don't know if you've ever had that thing. Yeah, you're all saying, oh yeah. Some of us probably walk through the world that way. I certainly have those experiences. But it was, you know, I had trouble showing up at the time I had wanted to show up at something, and I just couldn't remember things, and it did pass. But one of the things that I was told by Kathy, actually, on the first day, and she repeated it several times, was that the ramifications of this experience will continue to work through your system and your entire energetic system, body, mind, spirit, all the levels of our energetic awareness, for a full year and a day. So I did mark my calendar, and we'll see what happens. You know, she sort of encouraged us to just look at our life a year from now and a day, and to see where we are. And I'm having some experiences right now, and that's what I wanted to talk about. One of the things that I realized in that experience, the Seeding the Light gathering, in being with Kathy and the other Mesa carriers. Mesa carriers are individuals like you and me who have, you know, studied in depth with the shamans and actually carry an altar with them to bless other people. A mesa is a table, and they open up their table, which becomes an altar with sacred objects, and they, you know, they bless us with their healing energy that works through them. And I just lost my train of thought. Let me just center myself again. One of the things that I realized a few days after the gathering had concluded was a deeper understanding of what earth-based spirituality is. And of course, I had been exposed to it here at CCL. Most of us in this room have, because we were here when Reverend Al was here, so we were in his drum circles, right? We were in his classes, and I certainly was. And I was very, very inspired by that deep connection with plants and trees and animals. But what I realized at a deeper level this past week, I guess it's a week and a half now, was that you know, the connection with the earth is really the connection with our inner silence. And in that inner silence, that's where presence lives. That's where spirit lives, right? And that is the truth of our essence. And I never quite got that before. And I spend a lot of time out in nature because I go almost every day, usually twice a day, to feed my horses. And my horses live in paradise. They live just in a very beautiful place full of trees and a pond. And, you know, I saw an eagle there one day. I saw a fox the other day scampering over toward the pond. So it's about the horses, but it's about being away from the hustle and bustle of my life and really touching the earth and being a part of the earth. And no matter what's going on in my life, when I go to the farm, my shoulders start relaxing, and I notice the trees, and sometimes I hear messages. They just speak to me about love and peace and beauty. And I felt a deeper awareness of the connection that I feel, of the presence, the spirit within me, in that gathering, that Seeding the Light gathering. I really saw the connection that I can sit in meditation with a tree, or I can just walk through any park anywhere and notice presence. And of course that extends then into other areas of my life, right? Because I can be here today and see that presence within each one of you. And I am much more aware of it than I ever was before. And of course we talk about that all the time. We learned about that in Foundations, right? But do words really convey the direct experience of it? For me, no. I need to feel it, I need to sense it, I need to perceive it, and that's what happened for me in that Seeding the Light gathering, in the experience of being with everyone else who was there, you know, the other participants, the mesa carriers, the shamans. You know, and it is that I am presence, and what does that mean? You know, we hear that all the time. I am that I am. I was always fascinated by that because I never understood it. It doesn't really make sense to me. I am that I am. What does that mean? And finally it occurred to me one day that my mind cannot understand what that means, because grammatically it doesn't seem to make sense to me, and I never could make sense of it. And finally I realized it's just the truth of my being. It's knowing it, it's feeling it, it's seeing it, it's perceiving it, it's being the truth of who I am. And what is that? It's the spirit within, right? Rupert Spira, I wanted to talk about the reading today and the affirmation because another realization that I had at the Seeding the Light gathering, and it actually started before the gathering, it started here the Sunday before the gathering, was I started becoming aware of artists. And you know, that's not to say that I wasn't always aware that there are artists among us. I mean, Deb and all of our musicians, and you know, we all come in contact with visual artists, and many of us like to doodle and play and create art. So it's not that I wasn't aware of it, but I started thinking about beauty and what is beauty. Because at the gathering, before the gathering, I met a person in this room who I had known, and we started talking, and it turns out she's this amazing visual artist, which I had not known. She's a teacher and an educator. And then I go to this gathering, and I met 4 or 5 artists, visual artists, who were just really, their work was sublime and beautiful, and the way they shared with us. And I actually met some of them earlier in a class I was in with Kathy Milano, the Dreamer Gardener class, you know, planting the seeds of our visions and our dreams, right? But I became very aware of beauty, and I've been reading Rupert Spira for a while, and he just came to me when I was preparing for this talk here today, and I remember him talking about beauty and about love, and I couldn't remember what he said about it, so I went back and I looked at what exactly he said about it, and it's in the affirmation, it's in the reading, and it really is the essence of living a spiritual life. And what he said is that, well, let me ask a question. What is love? Have you ever thought about what love is? I mean, do we have an answer for what love is? Right? Can we really put words on it? We really can't, right? I can't. Well, he sort of did. And it gave me some insight because he's a non-dual teacher, which means we see the oneness in everything. There is no separation. You've heard the talk, no separation. That means that I am one, all that is. There's only the one presence. That is me. That is all of you is the same as me. When I see you, I perceive no difference. There's no separation between me and between you, right? That's non-duality. We talk about that in religious science. We talk about oneness. That's really what oneness means, but we don't define it that way. So what Rupert Spira says is that love is, let me see if I can remember exactly what he said. It's in the affirmation. It's the lack of perception of other. So, for instance, if I'm at home and my husband annoys me, I'm feeling annoyed and I'm perceiving him as other than me. I'm not really in love, right? I mean, I might be in love with him, but at that moment, I'm not, right? I'm feeling him as other than me, as different, right? And Rupert Spira says, when we're in that place, we're not in a place of love. So what is love? It's perceiving the oneness, really. It's perceiving no separation. And we're having a human experience here, right? We're on the earth, in the world. We know that this body, this mind, this is not the truth of my being. We all know that because we talk about that almost every Sunday. We talk about it in Foundations class and the many other classes that we take here. Well, we can talk about it till the cows come home. How do we live it? How do we really experience it? How do we know? The affirmation talked about knowing. The reading talked about knowing, pure knowing. That's our direct experience of the truth within ourselves. That's what pure knowing is. And in the Hindu tradition, they talk about being ignorant. Ignorance does not mean stupidity, which oftentimes we think of it that way here in the West. But what they mean is that we're in separation. Right? That's what they mean. I'm not recognizing the truth of my being. If I don't recognize it within myself, I don't see it in you either. Right? So how do I come out of ignorance? Just recognize presence. Just be in love. And sometimes we need to clear blocks. Right? There may be emotional traumas that we have. We've all experienced emotional upsets. Some of them come from our childhood, some of them come from our immediate experience of annoyance, whatever it is. Oftentimes that can block us from the reality of knowing our truth, right? So part of our work as spiritual beings, part of our practices, is to really look at what's coming up for me. What are my emotions? If I'm feeling annoyed at this person sitting next to me, what's happening here with me? All we need to do is ask the question, is this really true? Am I really annoyed? All right? Or is this person really annoying? If we just ask the question and just put it out there, we start feeling the energy come up within us, and you know what happens? It can move out. It can just move out if we're open. And I say that from my own direct experience because I do that all of the time. I've been practicing for a long time how to look at my thoughts and look at my feelings. And when something comes up, I can't say that I do it all the time. Sometimes I like to be annoyed at somebody, especially if it's my husband, you know, but that doesn't last long. It used to last a long time. It doesn't anymore. because I don't want to live that way. I want to live in peace, in harmony, in love. Everything we said in the affirmation. You know, I want to be like the radiant sun, living in peace and harmony. And I can do that just by being within my own awareness. And when I do that, once those blockages move, they're just temporary nothingness, really. That's what they are. They move on out, and what's left? Love, right? That's the presence. We can recognize that presence within ourselves and know that it's our truth. Now, I'm getting a signal. In the Christian tradition, in the Hindu, in the Buddhist tradition, we often come to that recognition through spiritual practices, meditation, of prayer, of contemplation. Many of us journal and do it that way, that we come to recognize the presence within ourselves. And Rupert Spira talks about that as being going within. Right? We all know what going within is because that's what we teach here, go within. But there is another way. And I became more and more aware of that from the Seeding the Light gathering because I was sitting in nature and we had several nature walks and we were actually interacting with plants, choosing parts of plants and bringing them back and creating like a blessing stick, an intention stick, and it was really a creation that was a work of art, and it was beautiful. And I started thinking about beauty. And, you know, that's another way that we can access the divine through our perception of beauty and through our creations or through the creations of others. And we can actually feel that sublime presence, and you all have experienced that by looking at a work of art or hearing a piece of beautiful music that really transported you. I mean, Reverend Julie here, she chants. I know she experiences that. I know that. I've heard her chant. All right. So that's sort of an internal and external way, because if she's chanting, I'm receiving the chant. So for me, it's external to me, but I can touch the presence within me by being in the vibration of that beautiful sound, all right, and that beautiful expression. And Rupert Spira talks about beauty. What is beauty? It's the second way to access that presence. The first is through love and the inner way, but the outer way is through beauty. And scientists do that and artists do that. And if any of you have read Bruce Lipton's book, Biology of Belief, you know that he really found God, was more or less how he put it. He understood the powerful presence in the universe. At 3 a.m. in the morning, on an island in the Caribbean, looking through a microscope. And I understand that because I've been a scientist in my past journeys earlier in my life. I understand that. But he did, and he's, you know, a very prominent spiritual teacher today, and he speaks authentically. But we can all do that through art as well, through creating our own art and through just experiencing beautiful art, right? And that's an external way. What Rupert Spira says, if the scientist and the artist goes deeply enough, and if the yogi and the guru and the meditative practitioner goes deeply enough, all right, there are two different ways to access the presence. No matter what you're doing, if you go deeply enough, you meet at the same place, which is knowing truth, knowing the truth of who I am. And there's only I am. That's what I am means. And it's a personal I. It's not me, Christina, right? It's that powerful presence where there's no separation between me and any object that I'm seeing. Right, we're all the same, all right, between me and any live being, we're all the same, it's all the one. And when I experience that, if I look at a beautiful work of art, I am transported beyond the perception of it. We've all experienced that. If we've maybe gone to a beach where it's so beautiful, or a mountain that it takes your breath away, right? That is the sublime, and that is the experience of the presence of the divine. Many of you might experience it in your family relationships with your grandchildren, right? Right? Spending time with your grandchild gives you that feeling, and I know that because I've spoken to some of you about your relationships with your grandchildren. So there are many different ways we can experience the sublime, capital S, sublime. So in conclusion, I just want to say to you, live life, you know. I live, I play, I enjoy life. Do it fully, do it completely. If anything's blocking that experience, take the time to work through it. And it might feel uncomfortable, it might feel painful, might feel challenging, and that's where you have resources. And you know what they are. It's, you know, perhaps prayer, perhaps praying with someone else, or meditating with someone else, journaling, all different ways, but be that life, capital L life. That's why we're here today, sharing each other. So what I'm saying to you today is, I am, but I am you as well. We are all that one I am. Thank you.